when I am within this realm of cause and effect, I am advised by Bhagavan Krishna to transcend it. To transcend it. Now, how do the people understand? Transcending the relation of cause and effect, transcending the realm of cause and effect. So Arjuna thinks that by not doing karma, by avoiding karma, I transcend karma. Why should I karma? Why should I do karma? Why should I continue doing my duties consciously? I just avoid and be lazy. I transcend karma. Here Bhagavan Krishna says, what he tries to say is, karma is not activity, transcending is not laziness. Okay? Karma is not simply physical activity, and transcending karma is not simply laziness. By being lazy, by avoiding karma, you don't transcend karma. Because this is how most of the people think, that by just avoiding karma, you transcend the realm of cause and effect. That won't happen. Because the very realm of cause and effect, in the realm of time, in the realm of cause and effect, you exist because of a different thing. Your understanding, your outlook, your thinking, your whole thing, whole personality, what you are and how you are related to the world. So this realm of cause and effect, this realm of cause and effect pertains to your understanding of yourself, your understanding of yourself. What do you understand yourself to be? And as such a person, you are a part of the world, you are related to the world, you are part of this cause and effect world. Okay? Now the transcending the realm of cause and effect is what required. That happens only when you transcend a part of individuality. A part of individuality which is extroverted, which is outgoing. What makes you an individual? What makes you a jiva? What makes you an individual? On account of which you fall into this realm of cause and effect. Okay. You come into this realm of cause and effect because of your sense of individuality. That sense of individuality is due to your identification with your body, mind and sense organs. And that identification also is a complex thing. Identification has got a much deeper roots in your personality, in your heart. Emotionally you are related because your relationship with the worldly objects, the dependency, psychologically, emotionally related, it goes deep into your personality. Your relationship with the external world, objects, relationships, objects and things, property, money, social status, political, social or whatever status, money, power, pleasure, emotional relation. You see how many things are there. One is a physical, second is psychological, emotional, third is intellectual. All these levels you are related to the world, people, things, etc. And then that goes deep into your heart. Because of that, you have a self-image, you form a personality, you form an individuality. And that individuality has different layers, and it is a very complex structure. It is related to the world through different threads. Now you have to loosen those threads. You have to loosen all your threads with the world, and that's what is reversing the very karma. The very relationship you have to reverse. Okay? How you were related? The relation was based upon your emotional attachment, identification, expectations, dependency, psychological insecurity, all those things. So all those things, the deep-seated relationship with them has to be unwound. Therefore, your personality has to be restructured, and then you have to have your own understanding and your relationship, everything has to be changed. How you change? Now the question comes, how do you change? Your understanding about yourself, your relating to your uh, understanding determines your relationship, your image about yourself, your value, image about yourself, the values about yourself and also about the world and worldly things, people, how much value you give to them, how much value, psychological value I am talking, subjective value, how much value we give to the world and the things and the events, property and people, etc. How we relate to them. Our relationship is based upon values, based upon subjective attachment, subjective interest. The subjective relationship is based upon values, interest, attachment. All these are relationships. How much we depend on them. Psychologically, I'm talking. Emotionally, psychologically, how much we depend. We see them as a part of our personality, part of our happiness, part of our identity even. See, the country is a part of your identity, language is a part of identity, culture is a part of identity, religion forms a part of your identity. Religion forms an element which is a part of your identity. Your family, your parents, your ethnicity also forms a part of your personality. That's why you see people quarrel, destroy, all this because of these emotional problems. People think Vedanta is only personal. It is not only personal. It relates to world. In the sense, if the Vedanta brings about an outlook change in your outlook, a maturity in you, definitely your interaction with the world, your maturity, your mature outlook affects the world too. You have to make correction within your inner body, inner mind. You have to improve your personality and understanding and grow. But once you grow, you will be changing your influence, your relationship with the world around is different. Okay, therefore, in a way it is personal, in a way it is a social also. It affects the world. It creates a social culture. It creates an atmosphere of interaction with people. It creates a different atmosphere, a different interaction with people. Okay. It creates a different atmosphere, different relationship, because your understanding changes your outlook, your image, your values about things and about yourself. That means you are relating to them at a different level. Earlier the emotions become, then what happened? Then how to change? What is karma yoga? How to change? Now simple thing I tell you, instead of looking at one object, see that object along with the context in which it exists. It is like a person. When you relate to a person, generally we relate to a person as a person, but here you have to broaden the context in which the person exists. You relate to the person not only as one person, relate to him as his whole family. Relate to the person as belonging to the family. Relate to the person as belonging to the whole society. Relate to the person as belonging to the whole nation. Relate to the person as a whole human being related to the whole universe, related to the world, is a part of the world. So every object, we relate to them not as an isolated object, but as a part of a larger context. You understand? The person, for example, you see, a person has given you, you wanted a pen or something, he gave you pen. Okay. Or something, some gift he has given you. Now how do you look at it? Do you say that, oh, he has not given me, his only hand has given me? Do you see his hand is giving me and not the person? No. We see that when he gives with his hand, you see the whole person has given. Okay. So we see the hand as a not isolated way. We don't see the hand as an isolated thing, but a hand is a part of the whole person. Similarly, a person has to be seen. When you relate to people, you see them, people as not individuals, individual units, but see them as a part of a larger human society. larger human context. That's why when you hurt a person, you are not hurting a person alone, you are hurting the whole humanity, isn't it? So this changing your vision to a larger vision, when you relate to people, see, when you spend money, supposing you waste money or you waste one thing, see, this thing is produced by a society, a company has produced it, how much hard work has gone into it. If something is wasted or destroyed, see that you are destroying the hard work of so many people, you are destroying the very economy of the society. Okay, so there, this way, when you see anything, see how it is connected to the whole global humanity, or we say Vishwarupa. So this way, seeing any object or any person in the context of a larger background, your attitude towards the person changes. You don't see him as an isolated person. See him as a whole society, whole world, global humanity. Okay. Similarly, myself, I am not just an individual alone. I am a part of my culture. I am a part of my family. I am a part of the society. I am a part of the values and culture which has brought me up. So when I grow up, I have received the contribution, help of my father and mother. My whole family has helped me. My teachers have helped me. My society, the elderly people of our earlier generation have helped us. Earlier generation, they brought our culture, values, interaction, many things. So therefore, I feel that I am an inseparable part of the whole world. I am like a small leaf. I am like a flower, part of the whole tree. You see that you are not an isolated flower. You are a flower. As a flower, you have bloomed as a flower, part of the whole tree. Okay, you are a fruit of a big tree. Similarly, I see myself as a part of the whole cosmos. And see, each individual, each event is a part of the whole cosmos. Then you relate to them. Don't relate to an individual alone. Because it is too individualistic view, is selfishness, is egoistic. That ego melts away. You become humble. Your love becomes large, not an isolated or individual. It becomes a large, spreading towards the whole universe and all people. So this way, your relation with people, money, and the society, everything, whole thing changes. This is what karma yoga means. Because that means karma is not a simple action alone. In fact, even the karma itself issues from you as a whole person. Don't see karma as a simple event. See the karma. Karma is a karma comes from your whole personality, your bringing, your values, your culture, your whole background motivates this a particular karma. Any one karma you do, that karma you do based upon or being motivated by your all your personality, your thinking, your value structure, your society and everything. Therefore, even the karma is not an isolated thing. See, it is an expression of a larger your personality. Then you see the karma is an expression of a larger cosmic movement. Okay? It is a cosmic movement that is expressing through me as a karma. Just a minute. Okay. So therefore, the very relationship brings a new joy, a new relationship. In this new relationship, your emotion gets elevated. You become purified. You become selfless. You feel a greater joy, greater relationship, a vaster relationship with a vaster entity. The narrowness, too much of smallness will go away. See, your conception of God changes. Your conception of life, your conception of religion, your conception of jiva, individuality, all that becomes broader enough, not a narrow one. So this broadness is what we mean karma yoga. Because your relationship with you and the rest of the world. your understanding of yourself and with the world around you. All this earlier relationship, it changes now. Just like, for example, see a baby. How does a baby look at the world? Baby of 2 or 3 years old, 5 years old baby. Bah. Okay. Okay. Baby relationship is just narrow with 1 or 2 people. That's all. The baby's outlook is too small. And as you grow, if you don't grow with your physical age, as you physically grow, the age comes up. uh, if your understanding also doesn't change, your personality doesn't change, your relationship with the people around should change. It must change from individual to a larger context. See, keep the whole global cosmic context. That's what is Ishvara. Bhagavan or Ishvara. See, the very understanding of the whole concept of God which Europe brought us is totally different. Here, when that is too emotional, too, what is a monotheistic God, is a perversion. It creates a lot of problems. It creates intense emotion, but still it is narrow. It creates sometimes intense sacrifice and also intense destruction, hatred also. It creates intense hatred and intense destruction and intense sacrifice also. But the sacrifice looks like a morbid sacrifice. Morbid means very emotional, one-sided, extreme, one-sided. Your sacrifice looks that you kill and you die also. So that is a very morbid sacrifice, morbid thing. Anyway, we are not talking of that. God means a healthy concept of God, a loving, a simple, open-minded, logical, and is also whole, is present in everybody, every one of us, all living beings, plants, animals, mountains, rivers, earth, the whole cosmos. Because he takes whole cosmos as a one person. We are all the different hands and legs of the one cosmos. See, look at that way. Whole cosmos is a one being. We are all simple hands and legs of the same thing. Just as I love my hands, I love my fingers, all my hands and eyes and ears, every part of my body I love. Similarly, you see the whole cosmos as a one person, and then we relate to them. So this way, this is a very healthy way of relating. So the very idea of God, therefore, more you bring God into your life, more you become open-minded, a healthy person, a very natural, spontaneous person. Neither emotional morbidity nor extremeness, extreme fanaticism, narrowness, all that goes away. You become much more a sane person, very natural, spontaneous, loving person. Okay, the values also come, positive values. That's why whenever we talk of Ishvara or Bhagavan, the very thought of Ishvara changes you totally differently. Because the very idea of Ishvara is a positive idea. The very idea of Bhagavan or Ishvara is a positive idea. It's an openness. It doesn't mean any particular creed or particular group God, groupish God, particular group God or a clan God or a creed God. God itself means the whole universe, in which he doesn't discriminate anybody. You and I and plants and animals, we are all part of him. He loves all of us equally, and we are all just a part of him. So this is what we mean in Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga means when you relate to people, objects, things, animals, plants and everything, we don't see anything as isolated. See them as a part of the whole cosmos. And see myself also as a part of the whole cosmos. See how the whole vision shifts. Then your emotional relationship also changes. Emotions become natural love. They become deep and also spontaneous and natural love. The love doesn't come from emotional insecurity. Okay? People think that emotional emotional attachment, deep insecurity, coming out of insecurity, psychological feeling of insecurity, they think that is love. See, emotionally we feel insecure. We want to hold on to person emotionally. Blindly, emotionally, stubbornly hold on to it. And they think that is love. Emotional dependency, insecurity. We feel insecurity, want to hold on to people. Like the baby, you see them, how it holds on. And they think that is love. It's not love. It is an emotional, some kind of a, what you say, an insecurity, a fear, out of fear. In fact, they think they have, some people, why some people, the European, the religions, have all the three religions have come up based upon the very fear. Okay, naturally it may start from fear, but fear is a crude form of the real love. Okay, the fear is a crudest form, like a baby form. Its form has to be purified. The fearful, insecure mind has to be purified. It has to be made sane and healthy love. That's what is purity. That's what religion should mean. It should not reinforce the fear. It should not reinforce the concept of God as a narrow one, a clannish God, a group God, one particular narrow religion, creedal God, and so that he hates others. So the very concept of God itself is a warlord, is like Afghanistanic warlord, the Talibanic leader. So that kind of a God itself is a perversion. That doesn't bring any karma yoga. I tell you, it makes you asura. We call them asura. So you will become asura, you don't become karma yogi. Okay. Karma yogi is, it appreciates, it logical, healthy, beauty. You see the whole life. In fact, in art there is such a karma yogic mind. In good, beautiful poetry, because the poetry and art and the music and the dance, they elevate your mind. They bring beautiful, healthy values. You can see the whole world is an art. Whole world is a beautiful poetry. Your life relationship is a song and dance. It is a good poetry. It is a good art. Your every relationship with the people is a loving relationship, a healthy relationship. It's a very beautiful art. It's an aesthetic relationship. It's a healthy relationship. Okay? Even the emotion, the thoughts, feelings, ideas, they are all purified. They become healthy. Therefore, in our karma yoga, art is included. Literature is included. A good loving service is included. You see, a good loving service of any human being, guru and disciple, or children and parents. See, it's a very loving relationship, very selfless love. Even that is a karma yoga. To that element, when you are healthy in whatever, even between husband and wife, the very relationship where there is a selfless love, a healthy love, a wholehearted love, it sublimates your narrowness, sublimates your ego, purifies you. I tell you, any relationship, wherever it is a healthy, it's a divine, it becomes a karma yoga. Okay, the relations become, art becomes karma yoga. You are in fact the member of a nation. In fact, we call here Raja and the Praja, the people and the king. The relationship between people and the king is like between guru and shishya. Even the people and our king, we respect him, we love him. King also looks after us. So this very relationship is a very, very divine, very healthy, very noble, and very selfless one. Even that. Therefore, even the relationship between nation and the people, any human relationship can be elevated into a karma yoga. Okay, any relationship. And if you put all the relations put together, me and the world, me and the nation, me and the society, everything, me and the nature, how I relate to nature, I see the nature as a divine and loving and blessing, loving mother caring for me, and I am a baby, and I look at her that way. So the whole nature, even this is a karma yoga. Okay, so the relationship with the whole cosmos, whole thing changes, and this changes, purifies you. That insecurity, the fearful mind, the snobbish mind, the narrow thinking of God, narrow idea of God, everything. Therefore, you don't exclude anything. Everything is all inclusive it is. But here, the very concept of religion, concept of love, and concept of God, all these things are becoming too narrow, too personal and narrow, because it is excluding other and hating other. Every love involves hatred of other. See, this is how you see them. This is not a healthy love. Every concept of God involves a concept of Satan. A concept of a religion involves a concept of irreligious group, other people. We and other believers, every religious group involves the non-believers. The concept of God involves the Satan, the non-God or anti-God. And then every concept of love involves hatred for others. I said these are all same human limitations, same narrow human thinking. We are only religious, philosophizing, religionizing. That means religion is sanctioning the same human weaknesses, the same human immaturity. Same human immaturity alone, it is legitimizing calling it religion. That doesn't make religion, I tell you. Religion must elevate every aspect of the art, poetry, beauty, relationship, love, anything, family relationship, even husband and wife and relationship, social relationship, even kingly relationship, the politics, everything should elevate. That means person should see himself as a very broad person. Your values, everything changes. And this is what is Karma Yoga. And Arjuna is taught sannyasa, renunciation, is a transcending, not simply physically avoiding work and just remaining alone. People say that we are fed up with social life. Therefore, just giving an example, I am not much aware of that. Have you seen that? Thoreau, in America, Thoreau was a person. He loved to live in a very excluded life, a monk's life. He was not a monk, but something like that. He built a house in a forest-like place, and he produced his own things and lived a simple life and close to nature. But this is only a natural, it is like a hobby. It is also okay. To some extent it is good, but it is only another hobby. You just love to be close to nature and live it. But that also, if you take it like a karma yoga, then it is okay. I don't know, I have not studied much about Thoreau. I'm told that he wrote a book, Walden. Walden, Walden. And then in that he wrote his life and then how he lived and all that. And people think sannyasa is like that. No, sannyasa is not simply living an isolated, excluded life in a close to nature, build a house and live on your own. That it's not that kind of life. It is your whole outlook, your personality, your understanding, your relationship with the whole cosmos changes. Your inner personality changes. Okay, it becomes a healthy personality. This is Karma Yoga. So this is a preparing your personality so that you can transcend your personality and the whole world. That is real sannyasa. So therefore, Bhagavan Krishna says, transcending is real sannyasa. That is real jnanam, real Vedantic jnanam. For that, you need a preliminary preparation. A first stage of preparation is Karma Yoga. So you have to be in the same part of the world, you have to be the same relationship, but the same outlook to your relationship, your very quality of relationship, all this should change. Your understanding, your values, this should change. Then you see the life becomes different. The world becomes different from you. In living in this world alone, you are a different person. World to you appears as different, more divine and loving and lovable. Okay, you are a loving person and world is lovable world. Not any discriminative and exclusive and narrow and all that. You see the beauty in everything. Even the wicked people also see them. That's why we see them. Wicked people are also is like a raw. Like when you mines, when you dig a mine, you find a raw material like golden ore. In English we call ore, O-R-E. So the golden ore, or any ore you take it, any metallic ore, it is in a crude form. You have to remove lot of unnecessary things. Then the pure gold comes out. Similarly, even an asura, the most fanatic, wicked, the bigoted person, is a mature person. We see them. We only pity rather than hate him. See, the real spirituality, real Vedanta or Hinduism teaches how to pity asuras. Because asura is an immature, very crude form. He has to be refined. He has to be purified. He has to be purified. He has retaining lot of animalistic instinct in him. That's all we mean. But potentially he is also a saint. The most wicked fellow, the most bigoted person can become a really good karma yogi and good Vedantin. He may have to go a lot of process of karma yoga, values and all the things. It takes some time, some process, some sadhanas, either if number of years, if not in one janma, he may take more janmas, more births. In next life or second life, third life, fourth life, he may change. But thing is, there is no question of hatred. There is no need to hate. Because people are of different level. Some people are in a very crude form. Some people have crossed the crude form and have become little more mature, little more humanistic. Some people have still farther. Some people have become karma yogis. Some people have gone even beyond karma yoga. They have come to become real sannyasis, real saintly people, real Vedantins they have become. So people are at different levels. People are at different level. Therefore, we only see that each one is moving on and growing and moving. Like plants and animals grow. People grow. Everybody is in a growing stage. They keep growing. So people are of different levels. That's all. Somebody is at too low level. He needs more to be cared for. He has to be given good opportunity so that he will also become a better person. Therefore, we never see anybody as a totally wicked, permanently wicked, eternally wicked, and is going to be wicked alone. There is no such thing called eternal Satan. There is no permanent Satan and is by nature Satan and he will remain Satan. There is no such thing. It is all immaturity. Everybody has a chance to change and grow and reform and get purified. It is a stage. Even the crudest form, the most wildest animalistic human being, wickedest human being is also a one stage, a particular stage of life. Only we say that we keep a distance from him so that you won't be affected. Because you are vulnerable and that person is too crude, too immature, he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand, therefore keep a distance, but no hatred. No hatred is meant. But now, therefore, we see the natural human wickedness is not a problem. The natural asuratvam is not a problem. When asuratvam becomes a theology, it becomes an ideology, then it becomes reinforced. It becomes defended. You create a group of people, you create an ideology, you create a religion, you create a God, you create a concept, you keep on defending it. Now you don't allow it to be questioned. This is what you organize it and defend it. That becomes a problem. See, the human weaknesses, wickedness, narrowness, they are all part of human nature. So even the asura, the bigoted nature, the fanatic, the bigotry, all these things we understand. One part of it is a human limitation, human weaknesses. But you can grow, you can change, you can reform, you can improve. The purpose of religion, purpose of spirituality, the real religion I mean, is to help a person to reform, purify and become a better person. But therefore, even the asuras also, in India also we had asuras. But asuras didn't have religion and they didn't have asuric God, asuric religion, asuric holy book and asuric organization, asuric church we didn't have. That's the only thing. It's a human nature, you find everywhere asuras. But thing is, you create a religion, an organized religion. That means what? You reinforce it, you protect it, you don't allow them to grow. You don't allow them to reform. You don't allow them to, your concept of God your understanding of God has to change. As your mind improves, you become a purer person, then your concept of God also becomes larger, all inclusive. He is not a narrow and wicked and all that. Isn't it? That should be the idea. But the problem is, when you organize it, now you don't allow questioning. You don't allow any questioning. You reinforce it. Don't allow the person to think. Two things. Internally, you create a brainwash. Brainwash means you condition a person not to question. You only think only in this thing. They'll give you idea. Only idea, dogma, theology means what? Don't think. Just accept these ideas. Stick to that. Remain there alone. Don't think. Don't become a better person. Okay? Now, individual, psychologically he is conditioned. Socially he is conditioned. The religion, the dogma, the church and the organization conditions. The books, they allow you to read only one book. So, in fact, in Indian, long before, some good scholars have suggested that there should be a comparative religion. Idea of all religions should be taught to our school children. These people, these means, there are two religions in India, they opposed it. It is they alone who opposed. Indians, Hindus become very happy. Yes, we would love to learn about all religions, their idea, their concept of God, their concept of life, concept of liberation, salvation, and all that. We love to learn. In fact, Hindus become very happy. Yes, yes, that should be introduced in our schools. It is they are afraid that no, our children should not learn other religions. Means what? They should not think, they should not be open-minded. So this controlling the human mind, that means keeping it as a devil and don't allow it to grow and learn, is the real problem. Okay, now there is no karma yoga. So the whole world, whole humanity is fighting, suffering under this kind of thinking. So you all have just let them think. We don't mean that just leave the people wildly and question everything. That is another extremity of the Western thing. Question everything, just don't believe anything. That is another extreme, then you don't know where you end up. That's a wild life. That's meaningless. We mean a systematic and understanding, a mature life. So the values, culture, these are all basic things. No question of religion. Basic values and respect for other human beings, not hating. This should be a common human values. Should form necessarily a first step of any religion. Not only first step, they should be throughout. No compromise. The basic human values, human relations should be always there. Then religion should be little more deeper one, little more advanced one. And this is what the whole world is suffering from. And they are controlling money, they are controlling power, controlling countries. These bigoted religions and bigoted ideas organize it. They control your brain, they control your ideas, they control your thoughts, they control your everything. That means they don't allow you to grow. So the very asuratvam is legitimized through this system. Okay. But how does Hinduism handle it? Only when you don't organize. We are not against any bigotry. Because how long you will remain bigoted? We have got atheists here. We take them lightly. We don't take seriously at all. Sometimes we listen. Sometimes we have individual chats and discussion. We just ignore. After few years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, he will change. He himself will become softer man. He will understand. Many atheists have changed in India. We don't force them. We allow him to. We expose him. We allow him to study and observe and live life. After some time, they will change. So this is how the simple life is. Don't force them, but you allow them. Expose him to different life and different. Let him see people, religious people, semi-religious people, a very religious students who are very beginners, and totally non-religious people, irreligious people, philosophers, Vedantins, Jnanis, Karma Yogis. Let him watch. Let him see all kinds of people. Then he will change. Oh, my understanding is too one-sided, and he will change. You all of the people, they will change, they will learn. This problem with these organized religions is, these monotheistic religions is, more than God, they have got a Satan. Oh, more than religion, they have got more than irreligion. Okay. They are organizing more. By their organizing, they are strengthening more asuratvam. They are strengthening more bigotry, more narrowness. More they try to control the human being, more the mind rebels. Therefore, you have got more atheists in Europe than in India. More atheists. Because more you control, more atheists come. People go rebel against religion. We hate religion. More hatred comes because there is such a hateful God. In India, even atheists don't hate so much our gods. Once in a while, when they are in a mood, they criticize, and we take them lightly. Whatever we discuss sometimes with them, we try to tell them. Sometimes we also criticize and we leave them, that's all. Still they are friends. Even atheists live together with us. After some time he will change. Because this is what the human mind is. Let us understand. First thing is dharma, the values is a preliminary thing. No compromise with basic human values. Just because you differ, I'll kill you. You have no right to live because you differ from me. The government controls only this law will prevail, no other law, no other people. No minority should live. Whole country should have only one thought, one thinking. This is what is destroying the humanity. Isn't it? I think the whole world has to learn a lot from Hinduism. How Hinduism does it. Even Hindus also getting brainwashed with these Europeanic religions, Abrahamic religions. Okay? Or because they are getting educated in a Western way alone, European way. Our modern education is all European books alone. In fact, it was started by Britishers, and our people added up communism into it. Now the communism and Britishers put together, missionaries put together, they are all creating havoc. First thing is the biggest enemy to humanity is only Hinduism. See, what a wonder. Hinduism is the biggest enemy to humanity. And they people are very open-minded. This is the perversion. The person who hates, he has got a right to hate others. If you expose the hatred, you are hateful. Your talk is hateful. You are hating us. See, this is called asuratvam. Simple asuratvam, individual asuratvam, an instinctive asuratvam. Asuratvam is an instinctive nature of certain people. That is a certain animal instinct. Is okay. He will grow. We allow him to grow. But thing is, if it is organized, then it becomes a problem. It expands, deepens, spreads. It doesn't allow the person to grow. All humanity is getting day by day into becoming more animalistic, more asuratvam. The whole world is becoming asuras. Doesn't allow the good and sane people to live peacefully and happily. We had few asuras in Hinduism. Good people were in large number and asuras were very few people. Now we are also becoming like Europe. The spirituality cannot be practiced openly. Earlier religion, spirituality was openly practiced. Even asuras would not interfere with religious people, spiritual people and sannyasis. Even asuras would not give trouble to spiritual people. Rarely one or two events, leaving them. Mostly they would not give trouble. But nowadays you see even saintly people, sannyasis, Vedantins are unable to live. Because their fanaticism has come to such an extent that torture them, persecute them. Persecute. This saddest pleasure has become a purushartha. Asuric pleasure, saddest pleasure. Should the world not think? Should the world not be educated in this Hinduistic idea? Hindu is just a name. We mean that kind of idea of philosophy and religion, that understanding of life. You may give any other name. Okay. Any other name, it can be anywhere in the world. I'm talking of the quality of that religion. By Hinduism, we mean that quality of religion, that principle, that outlook, that understanding. Whoever has that understanding, they also can be called Hindus without being in India, without knowing them, still they are Hindus only. So wherever that understanding is, dividing the people, hating them, oh, this is too much. Organizing hatred. This organized bigotry, organized hatred. So therefore God is also organized. That means you don't allow your idea of God to grow. God has to be fixed. Once he is a hateful God and he will remain, he will not change. But I tell you, in India, God keeps changing. Your understanding of God, your concept of God keeps changing. It must change. As you grow, your understanding of your God changes. Changes means improves, reforms. And that kind of life, that kind of society, that kind of humanity, why society? Whole global humanity. We want this kind of things. Anybody wants. Why everybody human being wants that? Why more chance is not given to this kind of global humanity with this global understanding? Why freedom and understanding is not given to this? Why these organized religions alone are controlling? Take away their organization. Let them live as individual asuras for a few years. Afterwards, they will change. But once you organize them, they are not allowed to change. They are not allowed to be reformed. In fact, These organized religions don't allow the people to grow. Organized religions, I repeat, don't allow the people to grow. They don't allow them to become spiritualized, people of values, people of karma yogis. They don't allow them. It is not teaching religion, it is preventing real religion, preventing real spiritual religion. These organized religions are preventing very religions. They are blocking, obstructing the real religion. Oh, that's what I am talking. But they themselves are passing for religion. Hinduism is not religion. They talk like that. In India, they say, oh, Hinduism is not religion. Ours alone is a religion. That religion should be given special protection and all that. And you give more protection, more they are destructive to the whole world. The evangelism and all kind of things, jihad and all these things are going on in India too. So it is not religion and spirituality. That I tell you, no Hindu can ever deny it. The real religion, spirituality is one we want and we love. We don't want to impose anything. In fact, wherever, in whatever form, the real karma yogic, real bhakti, real devotion, real yoga, real Vedanta, wherever, in whatever form, in whatever language, in whatever guru, wherever in the world, all that we are the people who love most. We love that kind of real spirituality wherever it is. In fact, we love to be friendly with them without imposing anything. We exchange love and share with them. We love to live together with them wherever they are, in whatever form. But it is an organized thing, doesn't allow you to grow. That is a problem. Okay, so Arjuna here, he says, why are you pushing me to karma? Bhagavan Krishna says, you have misunderstood. Karma is as an expression of your narrow individuality, narrow selfish individuality. Now, you have to use the same karma to change your narrow selfish individuality into a broader, selfless, a good, loving, compassionate, healthy person. A person of values, a person of... So the same karma, which is an expression of... Karma is an expression. It can be an expression of selfish action. It can be expression of selfless action. It can be expression of selfish love. It can be expression of selfless love. So karma is a both ways. Karma is a both ways. Okay. The same karma can be done as a yoga. Therefore, same karma can be done in a yogic way. That means your outlook, your understanding, your relationship should be, whole thing will be a yogic life. In fact, instead of calling karma yoga, we have to call it is karma doing in a yogic way. It is not only karma, it is the whole life is a yogic life. Instead of calling karma, doing karma in a yogic way, say living life in a yogic way. This way we have to say. Now the life is a normal life. Now you have to change it into a yogic life. Karma yoga is changing your life to yogic life. Whatever pursuit you do, whatever thing you pursue in your life, your relationship, your social, economic, emotional, all the relationship, everything should undergo change with values, with a purity, with a selflessness. So this is what is karma yoga. Whole life is karma yoga. That's what he says. Sanyasastu mahabaho. 6th shloka I am reading. Dukkham aptumayogataha. Without this yogic life, without taking to this yogic life, without preparing your mind, your personality and your relationship, sannyasa, the transcending of real karma, is not possible. You only become a immature person. In the name of transcending, you start becoming lazy. You give up karma. Or you become a lonely person, live in a forest somewhere, build a hut and live. You think that is sannyasa. That's okay. You are living an isolated, a lonely life, solitary life. That doesn't help you to transcend. Transcending means your whole outlook, understanding, maturity changes. Okay. Therefore, Bhagavan Krishna says, transcending is the real goal. Transcending your individuality. Transcending your relationship with the world should not be based upon your narrow individuality. It has to be totally outlook change, where you are the Brahman and the whole world is inseparable from that absolute truth. Transcending time and place, transcending cause and effect is the real goal. But that requires a certain correction, certain fixing of your personality. Therefore, let your life be karma yoga. Okay. Sannyaasastu mahabaho dukkhamaptuma yogatah. Bhagavad Gita is an amazing work. You know, do you know that our traditional scholars, what do they say? Teaching Bhagavad Gita is more difficult than teaching Upanishad. You talk to all our traditional scholars, Orthodox scholars, Sanskrit scholars. Teaching Bhagavad Gita is more difficult. Teaching Upanishad is easy because Upanishad talks things straight away. Bhagavad Gita talks of different levels, different angles. Okay, various levels and various angles. Highly creative. It is a multifaceted creativity you find in Bhagavad Gita. Multifaceted creativity. Whole life is a creative. The very Vedanta is creative. The very every shloka is giving you a creative understanding from different levels and different angles. Therefore, so this has to be understood. Therefore, without that making your life into a karma yoga is not only doing karma, it is the whole life becomes a karma yoga. Your whole life, your thinking, your emotion relations, your attitude, your acting, your interacting, everything changes. Becomes a yogic way of talking, yogic way of living, yogic way of relationship. Okay? Everything changes into your karma yoga. Karma yogic life it is. Instead of calling karma yoga, let us call this life yoga. It is a life yoga. Okay. So without that making your whole life into a karma yoga, Sannyasastu mahabaho dukkhamaptuma yogata. Each statement is such a beautiful statement. Every word of Bhagavad Gita, every line of it is filled with a highly creative understanding. A creative approach to life. Nothing is a fanatic, narrow and small and what you call preconditioned. Openness. At every stage you become very loving person, opened person. Okay. Therefore, yoga yukto munir brahma nachirena adhigacchati. If you follow that karma yoga, life of karma yoga, that life yoga, you will be transformed. You will be prepared for that sannyasa, the real spiritual inquiry. Okay. And that real sannyasa means that inner urge for selfish life, selfish activity, a self-centered life and self-centered activity you give up. Sannyasi means without any individuality. He gives up his identity. He gives up his social identity, family identity, all your past identity. He transcends. He transcends these individual narrow identities. He becomes a universal being belonging to the whole world. Whole world is ours. All humanity, all even by animal kingdom is ours. Plants, animals, whole thing is ours. You just hug the whole universe as yours. So this is a sannyasi. Therefore, sannyasa doesn't belong to a group or society. Sannyasi belongs to the whole universe. And now these religions have created such a society that even sannyasis are harmed and hurt. They are ill-treated. Sannyasis are considered as beyond everything. Why do you hurt such people? It belongs to everybody. No. Even sannyasis are hurt and harmed and humiliated, tortured. Such religions are coming up. They start dividing people. Oh, terrible it is. Anyway, I think we'll stop with this. Okay, we'll continue. 6th shloka we have completed. 7th shloka. Okay, he told the necessity of karma yoga. Now, what is that karma yoga? Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarva bhutatma bhutatma kurvannapi na lipyate. With the help of this karma yoga, how you come to understand how karma yoga, the necessity of karma yoga, we talked about it. Then how to do that, we will be talked about in this next a few shlokas. Okay. Oh, karma yoga and the ultimate goal of that Brahma Jnanam 2 he is talking. Anyway, we'll touch that in the 7th, 8th, 9th. I think 7, 8, 9. These 3 shlokas go together. Thereafter 10, 11, 12. Yeah. First 3 shlokas. Now 6th we have covered. 7th, 8th, 9th. These 3 shlokas form one topic. Okay. Then 10, 11, 12. 10, 11, 12 we talk of karma yoga. And this 9, 10 and 11. 9, 10 and 11? No, 7, 8, 9, sorry. 7, 8, 9, these 3 shlokas talk of that Jnani state. Okay, the highest Jnani, absolute Jnani. Now the later 3 shlokas talk of Karma Yoga. So these 2 topics we'll discuss in the next class. Okay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om Tat Sat. So I have changed this Gita back to my, because we wanted to have some class with our brahmacharis. So it didn't work out, and they are unable to come. It doesn't suit them. I think our Gita class on Sundays, every Sunday, Gita, it will be in English, and Gita alone, only Gita we touch. Other days we have other classes, 1 class per day, 1 class per week. So if we have on Sunday, hereafter we don't have to cancel, and we will continue regularly. I think you make a note of it. We changed back to our Sundays, and Monday as usual holiday, and Tuesday to Saturday we have our classes. Okay, Om.